Hey guys, Average Joe here, and this is a video for all you guys who have broken the plastic tab on your older plates. This is especially true, I believe, on 552 Series 1, where these were common, but the other series have them as well. But what happens is over time, this plastic cover, because this is just steel that has been covered in plastic, and the plastic is not glued, it's not bonded to the steel. It's just kind of a shell over the steel. Inside here, there is a metal tab that's part of the steel. This is just a plastic covering. And what happens is over time, this tab plastic can shear off. It'll just crack off. It'll either come off in little chunks or sometimes completely off all the way around where the tab is located. Now, of course, when that happens, now you don't have enough meat on this tab. It's not thick enough. So basically, you go from let's say this was your tab before. Actually, let me draw that up a little higher for you. Let's say that this was your tab before. When the plastic cover breaks off, the underlying tab in steel is smaller. It's in here. And as a result, there's not enough meat right here to hold on the discs, that I sell, or on your OEM discs. So this is very unsafe when it happens to your plates because it allows the plates to potentially slip out of your discs. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to look into making steel versions or metal versions of these plates, because that shearing is a safety issue on the sets that have the plastic tab. Now, if you have the metal tabs, which you'll see on some of the newer sets, it's typically a long metal tab. It'll look something like, this, and it'll have rivets. And this long metal tab, the rivets snap, and this metal piece falls out. So there are two kinds of failures on these discs. One is if the rivets shear off and your metal tab falls out. The other is if you have a plastic cover and the plastic shears off and you're left with only the smaller underlying steel tab. Now, I'll talk about this one in a moment, but what I usually recommend on this style with the plastic tab is that the owner cuts the rest of the plastic away, meaning all of this protruding plastic, cut it away, exposing the underlying steel tab like this. And then inserting a screwdriver or blade underneath here and prying this tab outward to make up the difference in the distance or the depth of the tab. So I'm going to say that again so that there's no confusion here. When you start out with your tab, plastic covering, and it breaks away, you have only the steel tab underneath, and that plastic is gone. But now you're missing this depth from here to there. It's not deep enough. By inserting a blade or edge underneath here and prying this outward, you can achieve a deeper tab to get that depth back again, so that there's enough meat here to grab onto your selector, or your retainer discs, the discs for which I make an upgrade. That's one method. However, it turns out, and this isn't going to surprise you, that some of those steel tabs under here cannot be pried outward. They are a different design inside this shell. And as a result, you wouldn't be able to pry that metal upward to make up the difference. So you have your original, and then you have your underlying steel. And for some of you, you're not going to be able to pry it upward to make up the lost difference with the missing plastic, okay? What can you do? Well, I went back and forth with one of my followers, Brett. And by the way, Brett, thank you. Brett had shared a photo of this modification with me, and I don't have the photo, but I'm going to show you here what was done to replace this situation. And it turns out what you can do, we kind of went back and forth trying to figure out what he could do to salvage his plate. How do you salvage this so that you don't have to go on eBay and buy another one of these? These things can get extremely expensive, especially when you start getting up into these big plates. They could be $40 for a plate. So how can you salvage it? And what we had talked about was using a bolt to replace the tab. How? Well, first, he took off his cover. He ground off this plastic cover completely so that the underlying steel tab was exposed. Then he ground off the steel tab until it was flat. So now he has this opening on his plate. This is all gone, and it's flat. He then tapped it, drilled it, and tapped it for a 1/4 inch bolt. Turns out that this thickness of this head, when installed with a washer, is about as thick. Actually, you don't necessarily need a washer, but it's about as thick. Let me see if I can. As the tab itself, okay? You don't want a head that's too thick. This is a good size bolt for this. So you would drill a hole here, and you would tap it, and you would put your bolt in. You don't want this bolt to go completely through the plate like that. That is not your goal. The bolt should be flush with this face. And you can epoxy this in. You can tap it in on the bigger plates. Of course, it's easier. There's much more meat. See, this is thicker. So when you put this through, you're going to have much more meat to tap. So it's much easier to do the modification on these plates. And frankly, usually it's the big plates that share their tabs. These lightweight plates almost never have that problem. You know, these are so lightweight that this tab is usually okay. But on these heavier plates, it's more common that this tab will shear off. And they have the thickness that when you drill through and you tap it, that you'll be able to put your bolt through and have it flush with the back side. So this, you have to buy a bolt that is short enough, or you have to cut that bolt down so that the head is flush with this side, and the other end is flush with that side. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me show you here visually. Here's the thickness of your plate. You want to drill through and tap so that the bolt is flush on one side and the end of the bolt is flush on the other side, not protruding. Okay? And one more thing, the distance from here, the bottom of this curve, to here is very important. That distance on your set, and I should have taken the measurement before doing the video. The distance here is very important, meaning that the head of your bolt should be at the same height from here to here as the bottom of this tab. Okay, so this here and this here, same distance from here. So you have to tap the hole here in order to make sure that this from here to here is the same as from here to the bottom of your bolt. And ultimately, what you'll end up with, is a bolt that is fastened into your plate, and that this now functions as the bottom of your tab. Same thing. This thing's going to be, coming through your plate. Oop. And it functions as the bottom of your tab. So anyway, he drilled it, he tapped it, he installed a bolt, and now he's back in business. That bolt head functions perfectly as a replacement for his broken tab. If you have this type of assembly, you can do the same thing. This assembly is, of course, riveted onto your plate. If it shears off, you can drill a hole in the right location, okay, here, and tap it and make sure that you install your bolt. Of course, it would go, this way. This head has to be on the same side as the tab would have been. So this would get turned into the plate this way, and this would function as the missing metal component on this style of disc as well. So this is a super long way of saying that you can indeed use either a bolt head, or even, you could even do this. If you don't have access to these, or you have something, a little bit more available, at your house, you need to find one thick enough though. See, this one here is definitely not enough to function. It's got this rounded edge. You would need to find one that is maybe, like an Allen. An Allen style screw would have a 90-degree cylindrical head to it. But the point is that this component here, this head on the bolt or screw, functions as your replacement tab on your disc. So anyway, hopefully for you guys out there that have discs that have sheared off their tabs, you now have a couple of methods that you can try to salvage that plate if you're handy. One is prying up the underlying steel tab, and the other is grinding this off, drilling it, tapping it, and installing a bolt or screw head in place of the tab. So I hope you found this helpful, and thanks again to Brett, who actually did it. You know, he is now using his plate that he would have otherwise had to have replaced with, you know, something from eBay for who knows how much. Instead, he, you know, a little bit of his time and a inexpensive bolt, and he's back in business with his plates. Hope you found this helpful, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.